We saw that to have good critical thinking, we have different pillars that are necessary, and we saw that the second one is learning about cognitive biases and logical fallacies. But what are cognitive biases and logical fallacies? Because we sometimes mix them together, but then they're not the exact same thing. So our brain is constantly processing information, and sometimes the way we process information is good enough and works well because our brain is approximative, and sometimes it's not that good. Cognitive biases are when we have systematic deviation in the way our brain is processing information. For example, imagine that I have a certain opinion. I go on the internet and I want to look it up. When you look something up on Google, for example, you're going to have a list of results. Let's say that I want to search for what the best camera is. So I go on Google, I type best camera, and I get a whole list. The camera I'm filming on is a Lumix. So I have a positive prior about the Lumix cameras, and I see that there's a list, and there are, for example, 4 lists. The first one puts the Lumix on first position, the second one goes for Canon, the third one goes for Lumix 2, and the fourth one goes for Sony cameras. If I like my camera, I'm going to have a tendency to go pick only and click on the first and the second link to confirm what I already believe. This is a form of cognitive bias that we call confirmation biases. So cognitive biases are sort of the way that we're acquiring information that can lead us into results that we wouldn't really want to be led to. We have many reasons to have cognitive biases. One is that we can't treat all the information that's available, so we need to pick and choose, and the way we pick and choose information can be misleading. Second is that we don't remember everything, and sometimes we need to retrieve information from our memory, and while we're retrieving this memory, we can distort it. So we're going to get information that is of bad quality. Sometimes we need to act fast, and when we need to act fast, we're going to have even less time to grab information, so we might grab the wrong kind of information and act on it. And sometimes topics are too complex, and we don't really understand them well, so we're going to oversimplify, and sometimes, for example, we're going to overestimate how much we understand something. Cognitive biases are often unconscious. We're not really sure yet, but we think that they're mostly unconscious. So the person that's having a bias doesn't know that they're having a bias. And cognitive biases are contextual. So the strategies you use to get information can sometimes be absolutely okay, and in other contexts become biased. For example, I'll give you an example. Optimism. We can imagine that optimism is something that is positive. We want people to have a positive outlook on the world. So what is optimism from a cognitive science point of view? Our brain is an organ that is constantly trying to predict what we need so that it prepares the action. So we're constantly trying to stabilize the world. We call this reducing ambiguity. Optimism is stabilization of the future. The future is uncertain. On a positive note, I'm going to tell myself things are going to be fine. Hence, I'm an optimist. And we tend to think that optimism is a good thing. Now imagine that I'm an optimist and you take me to a casino. A casino is a very particular context. I'm in the casino, and the casino is built for me to lose. The casino always wins, the house always wins. So I'm going to play at the casino, I'm going to lose, but I'm an optimist. So I'm going to tell myself, next time I'm going to get back the money I just lost. I'm going to play again, I'm going to lose more, and every time I'm going to be an optimist about it and tell myself that this is great. I'm going to be digging my hole even deeper. We call this, for example, an optimism bias. So a strategy that is adapted, we call this a heuristic, and it works really well, like optimism in my daily life. But in certain contexts, the same strategy can become a bias, and we go from I'm an optimistic person to I just fell into an optimism bias trap. So cognitive biases are about the way our brain is treating information, and sometimes how this treatment of information can be less optimal than what we thought it was. Cognitive logical fallacies, on the other hand, is the way that we construct arguments. So when we are constructing arguments, if I want to convince you of something, or if I'm trying to persuade myself of something, we're going to create arguments. And the way we're going to construct arguments can be fallacious. Which is a big difference with cognitive biases, that biases are biased. It's not like a mistake, where logical fallacies are fallacious. They are errors in the way we build arguments. So for example, I can tell myself, the most classic example, all men are mortal, Socrates is a man, then Socrates is mortal. You might think that this is a good argument, but it's not, because Socrates can be a cat, for example. all men are mortal, but it doesn't mean all mortals are men. So this is an error in the logical fallacy. I can build arguments in different ways that can be more or less robust, and you can learn how to detect logical fallacies and get better at creating arguments, either to convince other people or to have better mental hygiene in your own thinking.